Begin Self-Publishing, episode number 19. An interview with Helen Sedwick, author of the Self-Publisher's Legal Handbook.
Interested in self-publishing but don't know where to start? Want to get your book onto Amazon? Want to hold your paperback book in your hands? Learn how on the Begin Self-Publishing podcast with your host, Tim Lewis.
On this episode of the Begin Self-Publishing podcast, I'm going to talk to Helen Sedwick, who is the author of the Self-Publisher's Legal Handbook, who's an expert in self-publishing in terms of the legal side of things. Welcome to the show, Helen.
Glad to be here.
I'm going to ask you some, hopefully fairly simple to you, questions about the legal side of self-publishing. One of the questions that people often ask are, what are the advantages to registering the copyright, at least in the US? Does it make sense for people outside the US to register copyright there as well?
Yes, it does. I'm going to back up for a moment and explain that a writer owns a copyright in his or her work as soon as the writer puts it down in tangible form, either on a piece of paper or on a computer drive. Either you've somehow memorialized it in writing. But once you publish the work, or even prior to that, as unpublished work, it makes sense to register that copyright as an additional step. There are private will do it for you, but in the U.S. you do it with the U.S. Copyright Office. And in fact, I encourage even non-U.S. writers to register their work with the U.S. Copyright Office. It creates a record of what they own and what their work is at a particular date. And it's inexpensive and easy. You can do it online for $35, and it gives you additional rights to sue in the U.S., recover damages, recover attorney's fees. It's an easy, no-brainer step.
Is that $35 available for anybody globally, or do you have to have a US EIN or anything like that to do it?
I actually have not tried to register for a foreign owner, but I believe it would be $35.
Okay, well, I might give it a go myself then.
Yeah, because in the UK, there are these private agencies that will register your work, and it creates a record of ownership. That's the only purpose of it in the UK. But they're I think, £39 for a 5-year registration, and you'll have to renew it every 5 years. And then you have to wonder if they're still going to be around for a long time. I think we can count on the UK, United States government being around for our lifetimes, and it's a one-time fee. So it's $55, I think, if your work is unpublished, but it's $35 currently if it's published.
And by published, would that an ebook on Amazon count as published?
Yes. It's published when it's either in print and distributed to the public, or it's in a downloadable form that people can download from Smashwords or Amazon.
Yeah, because I remember reading on your blog that actually a blog or web content is counted as unpublished, isn't it?
It is. That is because our law hasn't caught up with reality yet. And there's some benefits to that. If people want to register the blog on content that is only displayed on the internet, like your blog or your web content, you can register the copyright on that. For most people, it's not worth it. Their blog content is kind of giveaway information. Yes, on my blog at helensedwick.com, I actually will help people by walking them through the process of registering blog content with the U.S. Copyright Office.
Okay. In terms of other people's, if you're making use of other people's content, how much, if any, of other people's writings can you use in your own work under this sort of fair use concept that I hear bandied around?
Yes, in the U.S. it's called fair use, and in the U.K. it's called fair dealing. And it's an exception. You are actually using someone's work without permission, but the law gives people some leeway to use it for purposes of criticism, education, news, research. You can modify work so that it helps people with disabilities access that information. There's also a broad exception for parody and satire. Whether in the US, usually you have to be making fun of the original work, but in the UK, with your UK sense of humor, you have a lot more leeway in using somebody else's work for the purposes of satire. And then there's this growing concept of permitting transformative works, where you're taking somebody else's work and you're building on it and creating a whole nother work. And I think this is in response to technology giving us all the tools to cut and paste and manipulate other work. There are no bright lines here that I can tell people. It's a question of degree. It's a question of how much impact you have on the original work, whether you're really stealing its market. And it's up to the personality of the judge, whether they think it's fair use or fair dealing.
Well, I guess certainly in the US, if you are sued for this, then it's going to be costs involved, whether you've got a case or not. So I suppose the best thing is to try and err on the side of caution and not get sort of into trouble in the first place.
Yes, it's always best to get permission. It's often a lot easier than writers think. Often, if you want to use someone else's work, they're flattered that you want to use their work. They're willing to give it to you. I mean, that's not going to be the case if you want to use a Beatles tune or lyrics. But if you find a photographer's work you like, if you're willing to give attribution to the original creator and perhaps pay a fair and reasonable licensing fee, that will get you permission in most cases.
Yeah. Are there any, I know with some music, in terms of like podcasts and things, you actually need permission from both the artist and the music company. Is there anything like that in terms of written work?
With lyrics, most of the time songwriters sell their lyrics to a music publishing company. So you're not dealing with the original artist. You're dealing with a big conglomerate company. But many of them have online sites where, particularly if you're self-publishing, and if you ask for permission to self-publish, to use some lyrics, let's say, 40 words in a self-published book, and you expect to print and sell 1,000 copies, they may charge you $25 or something fairly reasonable for that permission. And then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. So the best alternative is really to try and get permission in the first place, rather than worrying.
Because I get asked this question a lot, I have 2 downloads on my website on how to get permission to use lyrics and how to get permission to use images. How to track down the people when you need when you need permission, when you don't, and with a sample request letter. So if anybody is looking for this, please go to my website under resources. It's free. I just wrote these to help writers stay out of trouble.
Yeah, I guess the same information is also available in your book as well.
It is, but these short little downloads go into more detail, actually, like what website to go to, what to say. So they're really kind of like sidebars. They're additional, very specific information.
Okay, talking about pictures, I've heard that of Creative Commons license and free image websites. Is there anything to be wary of in terms of using images from these in your books or anything like that?
Those sites make me nervous. Unlike a stock image site where you pay some $5, $10, maybe $25 to use an image, in a stock image site, they give you a guarantee that you have the right to use the image, that they've gotten releases from anybody with a recognizable face in the image. When you download something from Creative Commons or from one of these free websites, you're not getting any guarantee that this person actually has the right to let you use that image.
Yeah.
Now, that might be fine on your blog where you can change it, but for something as important as your book cover, I think it's worth investing a little bit and paying for an image where you have the right to use the image. If there's an image that a writer finds and wants to use it and they don't know who owns it, You can do searches of images on Google, just like you search words. You have to go to Google Images, and you'll get a search box that includes a little camera icon. If you click on that and upload the image you want to use, it will show you where else that image is used, and maybe you'll be able to track down who owns it.
I did a 99 designs contest myself at the start of the year. One of the artists putting in their bid made me nervous because he didn't say where any of his artwork came from. He was clearly using stock art from somewhere. I actually didn't go with him because of these doubts, and I went with a different one where they said that he got it from like Big Picture and stock photo. Later on, I actually found that he'd taken most of his images from this sort of film cover design. And I'd never actually seen that film beforehand, and I thought, I recognise that from the 99 Designs contest. In that sort of situation where you've hired somebody to produce you a cover, if I had gone with that cover for my book, would I have been the person who would have been sued potentially because I've been taking an image from a film cover or something along those lines? Or would it have been the artist?
You would have been sued, and the artist, and maybe you could have chased down the artist because he was actually the responsible person. But the law puts a duty on you as well to do your homework like you did, or trust your instincts that something is too easy or doesn't smell right. Now, you can't avoid liability by pointing to somebody else. You have to take some of that on yourself.
Yeah, but you have to be careful in trying to work out where the images are actually coming from, don't you?
You do, and some writers will say, oh, probably no one's going to buy my book anyway, it won't matter. But that's planning for failure. It's much better and much more fun to plan for success.
Yes,
your book is going to sell well. It's going to take off. You don't want to have to ask for permission once you've already sold 10,000 or 50,000 copies. Ask permission up front, or do it right up front, and then you don't have to worry about it again.
Yes, that's very true. In terms of self-publishing services and publishing deals, what should independent authors be wary of in terms of contract details or things to look for?
Oh, this is a very big area. Writers tend to worry about getting sued for defamation, but that actually rarely happens. But tens of thousands of writers sign bad contracts. So part of what a writer needs to learn how to do is look at key provisions of a contract. And I do spend some time on that in my book, Self-Publisher's Legal Handbook. I actually even take contracts and make a chart saying, I break it down. This is a phrase in the contract. This is what it means. There are companies out there that will have very sticky fingers. Once they get a hold of your manuscript, it's very hard for the writer to get it back. If the writer wants to change companies that they're working with, if the writer gets an offer from a traditional publisher, they almost have to pay these companies to get their rights back.
Yeah.
So what an author needs to look at is the grant of rights clause in a contract. They should go straight to that. And if it says words like exclusive rights that you're giving to this company, or an assignment to this company, or that the rights are for all formats, all languages worldwide, stop. Because that's a very bad combination of words. You have to think of it as you would be giving them the keys to your house and letting them live there. So you have to make sure writers have to be very careful. I've written about this on my blog and in my book, just what to look for in contracts. And this applies even to small publishing companies. Sometimes small publishing companies want someone's copyright forever in all formats and languages, and they have no wherewithal to actually produce a product, a film, a translation. So even in traditional publishing contracts, writers need to educate themselves, this is part of being a writer, on how to protect their rights.
Yeah, I know that when ebooks came along, a lot of authors, the ebook rights automatically went to the publishers. So it's clearly something that to be aware of. I mean, I don't know if nowadays they automatically, I suppose the ebook rights you hopefully would be something that would be negotiated over rather than just given away straight away.
It is. And hopefully a writer has a good agent or an attorney helping them. But if the writer doesn't have that kind of help, there are resources to help writers. And there are a lot of lawyers out there who will give a brief consultation. It's our way of giving back to the community. So writers shouldn't feel intimidated by a contract or feel like they're going to be seen as a troublemaker if they try to negotiate a contract. In business, if you negotiate, you're actually more respected. That may not be the case in your personal life, but in business it is.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a bit of a historical thing where people are they feel honoured to get like a publishing house of some kind honouring them with a contract offer, and they don't necessarily read the details, and that's where a lot of these issues come up.
Well, the publishing company is making the offer because they think they're going to make money. They're not doing this out of kindness. So it is a business deal for them. So it should be a business transaction for the writer as well.
Yes.
This is when you're moving from art to business. So
I know, exactly.
It's a time to change your mindset a bit.
Okay. What would you say is the most avoidable legal mistake that indie authors make when they try to publish their books?
They think they can hand off all responsibility to somebody else. They look at the publishing process, the self-publishing process, and they get intimidated. So they go online and they see these companies, and one of the companies with the worst reputation is Author Solutions, which has a whole bunch of subsidiaries. The Author Solution websites are beautiful. They make it sound like publishing a book is so hard, but they can make it so easy. And if you pay them $5,000, they'll do it for you. So the biggest mistake is to think you can't do it yourself. So you hire people whose goal is to make you buy as many services as possible. They're not into selling your book. They're into selling you services. So the mistake is to give up too soon. Writers, there are good people out there that will help you on a freelance basis or even as a publishing coach. Do your homework, check reputations, look at the contract before you sign it. Think of the people you're hiring as if you're hiring contractors to work on your house. They work for you, and you are the publisher, and you should have the right to hire them, fire them, and you control the product all the way through the process.
Yeah, I mean, it is equivalent to somebody handing over the keys to somebody to say, oh, you do all the building work on my house, I'll just go away on holiday for several weeks. Oh, and I haven't got another set of keys with some of these self-publishing services.
It is. It's worse than that. It's like you hire the contractor to build your house, and then the contractor gets to tell you whether you get to live in it or not, or they get to say who lives in it. No. They build your house, and then they hand you the keys, and then you're in control. And that's how a writer needs to think about these companies. And if you can't get the keys back anytime you want, then there's something wrong.
Yes, exactly. What would you say is the most costly legal mistake that an author can make when publishing their book? And is there anything they can do to avoid it?
The most costly mistakes I've made, sadly, are publicists. I've hired publicists, and I'm not sure they did anything for me. I mean, I think the first publicist I hired actually got a lot of online reviews for this is for my novel.
Yeah.
But it didn't really translate into sales. So there are many people out there who are going to be offering services to the writer, and they're going to promise that they can make the writers a best-selling author. And they're myths. Some of them are outright scams, but most of them are myths.
Yeah.
So you have to look and say, well, if I pay $450 to have my book on a table at the Frankfurt Book Festival for 2 hours, am I going to be able to sell enough books for that to make sense? You have to ask yourself that over and over again, because it would be very easy to spend thousands of dollars on marketing services that are worthless.
Well, I think traditionally the problem is that a lot of these publicity and PR companies, it's very hard to actually prove what they've actually done or what the impact is of it. I mean, they're not ever saying we will sell you exactly this number of books. They're just making vague promises most of the time.
Yeah, and nobody knows for sure what sells a book, other than the fact that an author has sold many books before.
Yeah.
Famous authors, people automatically buy their books. It's a bit of luck and magic. As I say, you have to throw out a lot of seeds and hope that one of them grows into a tree.
Yeah.
And I don't think there are publicists who make it sound like they can provide a shortcut or a sure thing, and it's simply not true.
No, I think we all like to have this sort of magic bullet for marketing and selling books, but I'm not sure it necessarily exists.
So put on your skeptic hat. Writers should do that. Like the same, we're all used to doing that with car salesmen or car mechanics or all kinds of things in life where people overpromise. Do that even more so when you're dealing with all these people offering services to you as a writer.
Okay, just about wraps up my questions. How can people find out more about you and your books and in your blog and everything like that?
Well, I have a website. It's helensedwick.com. And it talks about my novel and my self-publisher's legal handbook. I also have a lot of resources for other links, and I have a blog, all on that website. I do a lot of speaking, so especially in the U.S. at different conferences, you can run into me. And people also email me with questions. Sometimes it takes me a while to get to those because I can get a lot of them, but I try to answer all of them. My background is I've been an attorney, a business attorney, for 30 years, actually 31 now, but I've always been a closet writer. I finally wrote a novel, finished one, and after shopping it around traditionally for a while, self-published it in 2012. When I self-published that, I realized, talking to other writers, that there wasn't a legal handbook out there to help self-publishing attorneys. Self-publishing writers.
Well, all attorneys probably. Yeah.
Yeah, or attorneys.
Yeah.
Many of them didn't realize about these contract issues. Many of them didn't realize they were starting a small business. So I wrote that book. And, I didn't write it to make lots of money. It sells nicely. I did it really because because I have been there and I'm trying to help. So I'm always interested in questions. I'm always interested in what is mystifying writers about the legal aspects of self-publishing and how I can help that.
So if somebody has got some sort of pressing legal problem, they discover their book cover is the same as the artwork for Forrest Gump or something like that, are you the sort of person they could contact to just tell them how to find an attorney or somebody to help them with it? Or is that...
Yes, I'm in California, so I can only represent people in California. The U.S. states get very fussy about that. But I can help people find the resources to understand what they're facing, find a solution. I mean, good attorneys and solicitors, barristers, what we're all here to do is not be bullies, but to find solutions to problems, and so people can move forward. My goal is to keep writers out of court.
Yes, I think that's probably a good idea. Anyway, well, thanks very much for talking to me today, Helen. And as I say, people can find you at your blog, helensedwick.com. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Sedwick.
Yes, I was, in my mind, I thought you were Sedgwick, but you're Sedwick. So
I'm Sedwick, no G. There actually is a Scottish writer, Helen Sedwick, but I'm without the G, Helen Sedwick.
Thank you very much for the interview, Helen. Talk to you guys next week.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please stop by iTunes and rate and leave a review. This helps make the show more visible. For free resources, show notes, and other helpful content, join the community at beginselfpublishing.com.